Welcome back to Why Killers Kill. I'm Dan, and today we enter the scorching outskirts of Tehran to confront the story of Mohammed Bijeh, the so-called Desert Vampire.
I'm Sarah, and I'll be honest, Dan, this case haunts me. 16 confirmed child victims, possibly dozens more. How does anyone sink to that abyss?
Let's start at the beginning. February 7th, 1982. Bijeh is born into grinding poverty on Tehran's southern fringe, his mother dying before he truly forms memories, leaving only a stern, authoritarian father.
That early maternal loss is a classic risk factor. Attachment theorists would call it a relational fracture, the first crack in the foundation.
Neighbors recall the boy wandering alleyways barefoot, scavenging scrap metal instead of attending class. By 10, he's already skipping school to haul bricks.
Child labor can interrupt moral development. When a kid's only reward is survival money, empathy rarely blooms.
There were red flags. Small animals found strangled behind his building, a girl claiming he exposed himself. Police dismissed it as boys being boys.
And those dismissals teach future predators that consequences are negotiable.
Fast forward to adolescence. He drops out completely, drifts between construction sites, and endures beatings from his father when wages aren't brought home.
The cycle of violence internalizes rage. Bandura's social learning theory reminds us, children imitate aggressors they can't escape.
By 23, he's unemployed, isolated in Pakdasht, a dusty township bordering the desert, a perfect canvas for secrets.
It's easy to vanish in places no one watches, especially if you're the child of an undocumented refugee, Afghan in many cases.
Which brings us to his psychological makeup. Iranian courts never issued a formal diagnosis, but parallels shout antisocial personality disorder fused with pedophilic fixation.
Experts also read sexual sadism. The DSM-5 flags persistent arousal from another's suffering. Bijeh described feeling powerful as children begged.
He demonstrated what Dr. Robert Hare labels predatory aggression, cold, calculated, lacking affect.
Yet he wasn't delusional. He knew right from wrong. He just didn't care. That absence of remorse differentiates psychopathy from psychosis.
So, how did fantasy turn kinetic? A turning point lands in July 2002. 10-year-old Mehrab Mandani disappears after accepting a ride from Bijeh. His charred bones surface weeks later.
Authorities shrug. One investigator later admitted they assumed the boy stepped on a leftover landmine from the Iran-Iraq War. The cost of assumption. More children.
Reinforcement follows. Bijeh kills again. April 2004. Arash Lului, 12. No arrest. The desert becomes his laboratory.
Each successful act cements a feedback loop. Dopamine surges. Fear recedes. The bar for thrill rises.
By June 2004, he escalates. Group abductions. He and occasional accomplice Ali Gholampour lure 3 boys with tales of hunting rabbits.
Notice that MO. Promise of adventure, small gifts, paternal warmth. Offenders often weaponize what their victims lack: attention.
Once secluded among dunes, he rapes the boys, slits throats, sometimes douses gasoline, sets flames dancing beneath the night sky.
The fire isn't random. Burning erases identity. both literal evidence and the symbolic self of the victim.
He photographs 6 of his final victims hours before killing them. That image later found on his camera. A trophy behavior, paralleling Dennis Rader's Polaroids.
Criminologists call it double possession. The body during life, the image after death.
Between March and September 2004, disappearances spike. Afghan refugee kids vanish weekly. Community rumors swirl, but fear of deportation muzzles parents.
Structural oppression becomes the killer's accomplice. If you report your missing child and risk exile, silence is tragically rational.
Police incompetence compounds tragedy. In April 2004, they briefly detain Bijeh, release him for lack of evidence, despite blood-stained clothes in his room.
Evidence. Sometimes it's easier to blame transient migrants than follow a messy lead.
September 20th, 2004, his crescendo. He murders 14-year-old Abul Hassan Salehi, the last confirmed child. 3 days later, an attempted abduction backfires. 2 boys escape.
These survivors sprint to police. And this time, perhaps out of sheer embarrassment, authorities act.
A raid uncovers gasoline cans, a blood-flecked knife, and that damning photo. Under interrogation, Bijeh boasts, "I could have reached 100 if you hadn't caught me."
That grandiose number underscores narcissism, a hallmark in many serial profiles.
He leads officers to 19 graves. Meanwhile, 16 police personnel face reprimand for negligence, an unprecedented internal reckoning in Iran.
But accountability can't resurrect children.
October 2004. Trial opens behind closed doors. Defense pleads poverty, head injuries, diminished capacity. Judges dismiss it. The confessions alone weigh a metric ton.
Iranian courts merge Sharia with civil law. For corruption on earth, the mandated sentence can be death, often public.
He receives 16 death sentences, plus 100 lashes. Gholampour avoids death, gets 15 years.
Then comes March 16th, 2005. Pakdasht's square overflows. 5,000 spectators, children on shoulders, anger thick as desert dust.
Shirtless, Bijeh is chained to a steel post. An executioner swings electrical cables. 100 lashes. Flesh splits. He grimaces but remains silent.
Victims' families step forward. One plunges a knife into his back. Vigilante catharsis sanctioned by the state. An ethically fraught spectacle.
Finally, a blue nylon rope slips over his neck. A crane lifts him. Nooses in Iran rarely snap spines. They suffocate. 20 minutes.
The crowd chants dual refrains. Death to Bijeh and God is great. Justice and vengeance tangle.
A doctor declares time of death, 10:20 a.m. Afterwards, police reforms promise tighter refugee protections, yet trust remains scarred.
Some Iranians celebrate swift retribution. Human rights advocates decry public hanging as barbaric. The debate mirrors global tensions around capital punishment.
Now, the question that pulses beneath every horrific detail. Why did Mohammed Bijeh kill?
Let's stitch the threads. First, childhood neglect and maternal deprivation fertilized attachment disorder. Unable to bond, he sought dominance to mimic connection.
Second, the desert environment provided physical and social isolation, what routine activity theory calls a convergence of motivated offender and absent guardians.
Third, sexual sadism. Clinical literature shows many pedophilic offenders escalate when fantasy alone no longer prompts arousal.
Add antisocial traits, lack of empathy, shallow affect. Without internal breaks, external ones must intervene, and they didn't, until too late.
Cultural factors, too. Iran's stigma around sexual crimes limits open discussion, so warning signs stay underground.
And let's not ignore socioeconomic status. Marginalization breeds resentment. Resentment can mutate into targeted violence against those even less protected.
But none of this excuses him. It only maps the terrain, cautioning us where future predators may hide.
His legacy? Graves in sand, policy reviews, and a chilling reminder that monsters exploit society's blind spots.
In trauma psychology, we say, if pain isn't transformed, it's transmitted. Bijeh transmitted pain on an unfathomable scale.
We, as researchers, must transform it into awareness, safeguarding, rigorous policing, and mental health outreach.
And into honor for the victims, whose names deserve more space than his.
Listeners, breathe with us. Heavy episode, but necessary. Thank you for walking this harsh path.
Reach out if the content stirred distress. Resources are listed in our show notes. You are not alone.
Next week, we pivot to psychological hoaxes, con artists who nearly rewrote history.
Let's leave the Tehran sands, carrying vigilance and empathy.
Thanks so much for tuning in and supporting the show. Your curiosity and loyalty keep us digging into these stories week after week.
What do you think? Share your thoughts, like the episode, and drop ideas in the comments. We're listening.